the 13 colonies. So you can see there's still pockets of Dakota speaking people. You see that territory shrunk toward the north. Now, it wasn't the wars that killed off our people, it was disease. We had never had any of these diseases that were upon us now. We had measles, smallpox, whooping cough, all kinds of stuff. And the documented evidence, again, with the Jesuit priests in Canada and Army documents down here that they purposely infected blankets to decimate our population. So the next slide here, again, now this is in 1812. And the Mississippi River Valley is now the western border of the United States at that time. And so again, because we had a treaty with the British, we were asked to help and fight against the United States. So there's three documented battles: the Battle of Detroit, Battle of Prairie du Chien, further down here, and Battle of Michilimackinac, which is in and around here. So at these battles, the Dakota showed up with, again, with 1,000 warriors, and we won the battle. And it's something I wanna make something clear. When we're talking about this, I've done these presentations at universities and public schools and people in general, right? We don't want anybody to feel that we're holding you responsible for anything. There's a word in our language, and that word is Washiki. Now, Washiki is a greedy person. Our language is descriptive, so we describe, we meet somebody who describes a character about them. So unfortunately, all the greedy people that our people met back then were white. So eventually, over the years, a Washiki person became to mean a white person, but that's not what that word means. It's a greedy person. And trust me, we have greedy people in our world. There's greedy people all over this world. That's a lot of the reason why we're in the position that we are. So, this is the Dakota Territory now. This is at the War of 1812. And I want to show you a couple of letters. These are love letters from my ex-girlfriend. No. So this is Thomas Jefferson. Now, Thomas Jefferson was not the president at the time of the War of 1812, but I wanted to find out because Thomas Jefferson is one of the founding fathers. Right? So I wanted to know what his thoughts were about the native people. Okay, so the War of 1812, he's conferring with his friend and Baron Alexander von Humboldt. This is in the presidential library, you can find it. So he says, my friend, the benevolent plan we are pursuing here for the happiness of the Aboriginal inhabitants in our vicinity. We spare nothing to keep them at peace with one another, to teach them agriculture, the rudiments of the most necessary arts, to encourage industry by establishing among them separate property. Now, we don't believe in fences and things of that nature. Everybody is equal. We looked after each other, and we never had personal property, separate property. In this way, they would have been able to subsist on a moderate scale of land and possession. They would have mixed their blood with ours and been amalgamated and identified with us within no distant period of time. That's assimilation. On the commencement of our present war, which is the War of 1812, we pressed on them the observance of peace and neutrality, okay? Because we fought with the British during the Revolutionary War, so they didn't want us fighting and helping the British. We pressed on them the observance of peace and neutrality, but the interested and unprincipled policy of England has defeated all our labors for the salvation of these unfortunate people. So up here we're okay, we're good Indians. Down here now we're unfortunate people. They have seduced a greater part of the tribes within our neighborhoods to take up the action against us as the schoolmasters. They have committed on the women and children of our county and taken by surprise, will oblige us not to pursue them to extermination or to drive them to new seats beyond our reach. Okay, so this is Thomas Jefferson. He has another letter. Here's another letter here concerning the Indians. Now this is in response to a previous letter where a posted meeting, that was brought to a letter of May 21st, so I won't get into all of it, but there's two fellows that lived with the native people. One was Lacatoy, the French, and the other one was named Adair. Now he says Adair had his king. He believed all of the Indians of America to be descended from the Jews. Same laws, usages, rites, ceremonies, same sacrifices, priest, prophets, fast festivals, almost the same religion. We all spoke Hebrew. Now, when you heard my uncle talk, right, he has a lot of, and if you listen to somebody from Hebrew, that's the way he talks. Now, it is true that we have the same laws, the same usages, because what's written in the Old Testament is what our laws are. Okay, so that wasn't far-fetched. Now, so he called it a king, right? And the French explorer, he also, so he said, you ask further, if the Indians had any order of priesthood among them, like the Jews, the Bards, Lesbians, right? So, this is what Thomas Jefferson. They are persons pretending to have communications with the devil and other evil spirits who foretell future events, bring down rain, find stolen goods, raise their dead, destroy some, heal others by enchantment, name spells, etc. So there's people that were living amongst our people and had a different. We were people. But the president, along with the government, ran it as a devil worshiper. And there's a reason for that. We were demonized for a reason. I'll get to that later. So next we get to 1862. 1862 is when the Minnesota Uprising happened. I don't know if you're familiar with the Minnesota Uprising, but there was what the United States used to do, or what they would do is they would take a piece of property, hundreds of square miles, and they'd make a treaty with the Indians in that area. But they would tell the Indians that, look, you live in this area here, it's 5 miles by 10 miles or whatever. You live here, you don't have to hunt, you don't have to fish, you don't have to do anything. We'll look after you and provide you with everything that you need. And for a year and a half, the government would actually do that. They would keep their word and they would do that. But in the meantime, they would settle around them for hundreds of miles. Once everybody was settled, then the government would cut back on the supply. And then again, this word was cheapy, right? The wagon train, I'm just using that as an example, right? The wagon train leaves Washington. On the way there, it goes through different traders, right? So each trader would take something off that wagon. So it got to the people that were supposed to serve. By that time, there's very little left. So now, there's men in this audience here. If your family is hungry, what are you going to do? You're a hunter. You go back to your original hunting ground. It might be 20 miles away, 30 miles, or 5 miles away. But now you're crossing some of these properties. There's fences up, there's fences, somebody's got a crossing, all of this. So eventually somebody's going to get shot. Usually it's a non-native person. The government comes and says, look, you have to reserve, you violated the treaty, you bring the army and wipe everybody out. So this is also what happened in 1862 in Minnesota. Now, the Dakota people had again, we had a reserve, everything was done. The Civil War was on, and so there was a treaty payment that was supposed to come out, and we're starving. And these are our relatives, right? Our great grandparents, 1862, that long ago. So there's a warehouse there, and there's a fellow by the name of Myers. He's a trader. He's got a storehouse full of food, a hockey inside full of food. And he would not give advances to the Dakota. And he made a comment that let them eat grass. Now this got out, people were upset, and just like what I said before, people started going out, and other people were going off to hunt. And of course something happened, somebody got killed. They came back and they told the leadership at the time, the fellow named Little. He knew, because he was out, he'd been out east to Washington, he knew the numbers, he knew the power of the United States. With the people, the warriors there, they would rather fight than starve. And so they started the war. And this war lasted for a little under 2 months. The conclusion of the war, we lost 300 of our warriors were sentenced to hang. So there's a movie called Lincoln right now. Lincoln, of course, is famous for the United States and population, where all men are created equal. They freed the slaves. African Americans were made equal. So all men are created equal except Indians. And so at the conclusion of this war, they because there were 300 people that were set to be hanged, they reviewed them and they cut it down to 38. So 38 people were executed. I'm going to show you. I'm just going to play you a clip. This is called the Dakota 38, and it's just a clip, but just you'll get a little bit of the story here. But it's 38. The 38 were hung on Boxing, well in Canada it's called Boxing Day, but it's December 22nd.
Memory of the 38 Dakota, not only do we have a horse to ride, we also have a run. Not only are we remembering, we're honoring our ancestors and those that have passed and struggled before us.
We're kind of tracing through the footsteps of the 38 Dakota plus 2 that had to go through this, so we're kind of, I don't know how to explain it, but we're kind of going back to that experience again.
I've always believed in, that they're watching over us, that, it's not just us up there, so just kind of the way I see it.
We know our history and hurt, but we're no longer in that prison no more. Reconciliation means something to everybody. I think it's a collective.
And we actually also had the opportunity to catch the run. We ran for 2 miles at about 3 a.m., so it's been quite an adventure for the 5 of us who were here last night. So thank you to the riders, thank you to the runners.
They were shackled and chained together in a wood line. The women began wailing and weeping. One of the prisoners in a loud voice said, "Namakum Kobe Tapweti, hear me, my people. Today is not a day of defeat. It's a day of victory. For we have made our peace with our Creator. And now go to be with him forever." Remember this day to tell our children so they can tell their children that we are people who died in order of death. Do not mourn for us.
I just want to tell all of you that I love you. We're doing this for our children, our grandchildren. And I want to thank all of you that helped me fulfill this dream. It's been a blessing for our people.
53 years ago, I entered first grade, and I was taught nothing but misinformation about people that were sitting on this land. And it wasn't until the 1980s, when I walked into my first powwow for Land Memories, when I realized that I didn't know anything except lies, for the most part. And so I started that day to listen. Whereas the Dakota people lived in unity with the land for many years, long before the European people came. And whereas the Dakota people have suffered unimaginable hardship over a long period of time, as the land and riches they once had were granted and removed from their control. And whereas the Dakota people have many times been forcibly relocated at the whim of the United States government, and whereas one outcome of their trials was the largest mass execution ever recorded in U.S. history during these 38 Dakota working. And whereas the Dakota people have put forth tremendous effort in an attempt to continue to heal from their suffering over all these years. And whereas the people of this community welcome the Dakota people to be part of our community today and always. And whereas the people of this community recognize the responsibility we must bear in this healing process. And whereas the people of this community wish to be part of the healing process as the wounds begin to close. Now therefore, in recognition of the tremendous contribution made by the Dakota people for that healing process to our community and communities in the region, I, John D. Brady, Mayor of the City of Manitoba, and Southern hereby proclaim December 26, 2008 to be Dakota Reconciliation Okitsuye Day. And in the sense of true reconciliation, I just want to say, welcome back to your home.
Jim Miller, that fellow with the cowboy hat on, he was a veteran, a Vietnam War veteran. And he had a dream in 1995, and the dream kept recurring to him that he was supposed to take this ride back east. And he repressed a lot of memories, especially on the state side. And he didn't know about this. He didn't know about this mass execution that happened. It's still the largest mass execution in U.S. history. And so he organized, or he had some people help him, and they organized a ride. So they went from Crow Creek in South Dakota to Manitoba, Minnesota. And that's what this ride was about. And the reporters that were there when when they escorted the prisoners out, because they were in prison, they were they wrote letters, in Dakota that they found last February, not this past February, but the previous February before. And these were all written in Dakota. And they found them in a church there. There was a minister who used to go visit the Dakota. So they write letters, and they were letters to the family and stuff. And he had stashed them in the church. And then they turned up last February. And they were talking about their living conditions. They had the stove that they had was taken away from them. They were given very little food, no blankets, that kind of stuff. And it was like a concentration camp. And through all that, when the warriors were unshackled and they were led, and that song that they told them, they were telling the ones that were crying for them not to cry. You know, we're going home. We're going to go home. We're going to be standing with the Creator. And that tells a lot about our Dakota people. And it's still, I've seen this video so many times, and yet it still gets me every time. But that's documented history. That's documented U.S. history. So in 1862, we had the Minnesota Uprising. Now you can see there's a broken blue line across here. This is the 49th parallel. After the War of 1812, 1814, the Treaty of Genesee signed. The British and the U.S. divide the country in half, basically. And up until 1862-63, there were still rumblings on the U.S. side about invading Canada, but nothing happened. No war took place. Instead, they had a war between themselves, which is where the Emancipation Proclamation comes from. There's a civil war. And so this is the U.S. territory. At that point, in 1862, this is the U.S. territory. So they had control of most of the territory except for this area here, on the Canadian side here. Now, if you look over here, this dark red part, this was Canada in 1867. That was Canada. So they hadn't acquired any of this territory. British Columbia was called Oregon Territory, and both the U.S. and the Canadian or the British were governing